Hello and welcome to round 5 of Grand Prix Toronto. Chris Pikula is on the right of your screen. Shaheen Soorani is on the left. This Grand Prix Toronto has about 1,720 some players with the number I heard. Significantly more than the first Grand Prix Toronto Chris Pikula played in. I actually met him in this city at a Grand Prix about 20 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, it just goes to show for how long the game has been around, as well as players like Chris Pikula.
Oh, yeah.
He was also featured in the Enter the Battlefield movie that came out this week.
Yeah.
Telling the stories of many players, including Chris's. Available on Netflix and certainly worth watching. I can recommend it if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, Chris definitely talks there about how much making it into the Magic Hall of Fame would mean to him. And by his count, he is 3 pro points away from getting back onto the ballot. They moved the line up from 100 to 150, and there really just weren't as many pro points floating around the world when he was at his peak as there are nowadays. So 12-3 this weekend, he says, will get him back on the ballot. Doesn't even have to make top 8. Just the 12-3 mark will get it done.
Well, so far he is 4-0, so that's a good start.
He's a third of the way there, except he had, I believe, 2 buys.
And his deck of choice for the weekend is White Weenie. This was a playable deck 20 years ago. Still here today. one drops into 2 drops, just attacking, boosting them with maybe some enchantments.
Yeah, those planes
That's where it's
are more than 20 years old, I believe.
Yeah. Shaheen Soorani, we saw his deck in the Turbo match last round already. He's playing Esper, a control deck, relying on some Planeswalkers. The most important card in his deck for this matchup is probably Languish.
Yeah, but can he really get away with nothing on turn 1, nothing on turn 2, Painful Truths on turn 3?
I mean, if there is a...
I'm sorry. That was turn 4.
Yeah, lots of tap lands in his deck to make the 3-color mana base work. He could get away with it because, well, for one, Chris has been trying to play around Languish. He hasn't been committing non-stop creatures to the board in order to not lose to the sweeper completely. And, you know, if Shaheen has managed to find Languish for the next turn, he might still be able to get back. Or even 2 spot removal spells would also be fine at this stage of the game.
Yeah, what do you think of Chris's strategy there of just kind of slow playing his creatures so that he doesn't get destroyed by Languish?
I think that's fair. When you are an aggressive player and you're thinking about should I play around a sweeper or not, one question that you should ask yourself is, okay, suppose my opponent has the sweeper and perhaps I play around it. Can I still win somehow? If by playing around the sweeper your hand is too weak after the sweeper, you should just play right into it and say, okay, I might just lose to it, but I'm just going to maximize
can't win anyway, so...
Yeah, just going to maximize my chances. Looking at Chris's hand, he was still able to keep a reasonable assortment of creatures after Languish, so at least he has that going for him.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like he'll have a lethal attack next turn.
Yeah, so that's definitely a fine backup plan. Chris was also attacking for a decent amount. I think he was attacking for about 6 damage or so.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Oh, wow.
You don't really have to commit additional creatures to the battlefield.
Commits a 3rd creature here. The 2nd Languish is now officially a problem.
Yeah, but finding 2 languages is much more difficult than finding 1. And at this point, I don't think Chris can really play around the 2nd Languish. He just has to hope that Shaheen does not have a 2nd Languish.
He's got 1 spell in his hand, right? Is that a 3rd Anafenza, maybe?
Could be.
So, I mean, he could have had 2 creatures in his hand. This is where it's tricky. I think I agree with you that he should just go ahead and assume there's no 2nd Language coming, because what he really wants to do is make sure he doesn't lose to a spot removal spell, or that, you know, a spot removal spell doesn't buy Shaheen a turn.
Yeah, or a spot removal spell and then a Sorin on the next turn, or something to that extent, which is way more likely than a 2nd Languish, and easy to lose to if you play too conservatively if you're in Pikula's seat.
All right, Chris, conservative for turns 3 and 4, but 3 creatures to follow the Languish.
Yeah, and Shaheen clearly does not have Languish. Chris now is 100%. Although I think Chris actually had Dark Petition in hand, which would allow him to search for Languish. He also has Spell Mastery, so he gets some mana.
He'd be 1 short, though.
Yeah, but if Shaheen top decks a land on the next turn, an untapped land that is, he might be able to play land, Dark Petition for Languish, cast it, and, well, blow Pikula out.
So that clue turned up a Thalia's Lieutenant.
Some more damage.
While he can Knight of the White Orchid. Oh, it doesn't get a land.
No, it does not.
Careful.
But he can play Knight of the White Orchid
He
maybe
just-
to bait out a counterspell, or if he plans to cast Talia's Lieutenant on this turn anyway. Yeah, you might as well make the Knight of the White Orchid bigger before playing your Talia's Lieutenant.
All right, here is Knight of the White Orchid. Like you say, he's baiting. Shaheen does have at least an Anguished Unmaking his removal spell. He's also potentially got Shambling Vents to block with.
It's also not only baiting out a counterspell, but also a spot removal spell for Anafenza.
Sure. Yeah, if Shaheen's going to kill Anafenza, he probably does it as a response here.
Mhm. So looking at Shaheen's hand, besides the Dark Petition that I mentioned, that does threaten to get the Languish on the next turn, there is indeed a Grasp of Darkness and an Anguished Unmaking.
Grasp being the canonical removal spell of this format.
Yeah, an
Seems like-
Anguished Unmaking, not so great when you're at 6 life, but
I mean, if you're going to take 3 anyway, you may as well have the creature die, right?
Gene also has to think of, okay, well, maybe I don't actually want to use my Grasp yet, because it is appealing to just animate Shambling Vent, block with it, and then tap Shambling Vent and another land for Grasp of Darkness. By playing the Grasp now, or kind of being forced to doing so, he does not have that option.
All right, so Chris just turns him sideways. Anguished Unmaking does kill the 3-power creature, so Shaheen's taking 3 either way, winds up at 1.
I'm surprised that Chris did not play
Thalia's
Lance
Lieutenant, right?
Talia's Lieutenant before attacking.
I'm with you. Land Thalia's Lieutenant would have won that game.
So no untapped land for Shaheen, meaning that the Dark Petition Language line is not available to him. Yeah, facing on 3 lethal attackers now. Ojitai's command could gain some life, but that's probably not going to be good enough. Jace can jump block, but that also doesn't really get him anywhere. Shambling Vent can block and then gain life. But unless Shaheen has something else to go with it, that's not
Yeah,
going
Chris
to
is
do
going
it
to go for
either.
Thalia's Lieutenant. It's going to run into this Ojitai's command, but that is not good enough. So Shaheen just scoops them up, doesn't want to tell Chris anything about what was in his hand, and Chris Pakula takes the 1-0 lead.
Yeah, the White Weenie deck, when you play somewhat conservatively, as Chris did, based on his extensive experience of, well, the game of Magic with
Yeah.
White
Whi-
Weenie and
White Weenie versus
Sweepers.
Control. It's
Yeah.
like the classic, iconic matchup. Lot of experience there.
Yeah, you can beat one Language. Language is still one of the best cards against a mono white deck that is so heavy on 1-drops. But one you can beat.
Yep.
Especially when Shaheen didn't really have much else going on. He just played some tap lands early on, a Painful Truths, the Language came on turn 5. So he was already a bit behind in that sense.
Chris with 3 Pro Tour top 8s. Bunch of other good finishes from back in the day. Shaheen's best Pro Tour finish, I believe, is a top 16, which he got at Worlds in 2006.
All right.
Obviously had a lot of success on the open circuit as well.
Looking at the sideboards of the players here, Shaheen has access to, well, a bunch of cards like Counter Magic. That's not really meant for this matchup. He does have 3 copies of Ultimate Prize, which is solid removal.
Sure.
Might come in, say, instead of something like Painful Truth or Anguished Unmaking, which pressure his own life total way too much. So that might be a reasonable swap. For Chris Pikula's side, I reckon that he might be interested in boarding out for Declaration in Stone. It's well, it's a strong card, but against a deck filled with Planeswalkers and whose only targets are maybe Jace or possibly Kalitas if Shaheen decides to board it in.
Yeah,
Would not be unreasonable.
Kalitas would be the reason that maybe you leave some
Mhm.
of them in. I mean, he obviously doesn't know Shaheen's exact list. May not have a read. I mean, it probably wasn't a Dragon's list based on that. Plus, I mean, Chris knows Shaheen. I'm sure he's, I don't know how public Shaheen has been about this exact list. I haven't read his articles this week, but I mean, he's the kind of guy who will just tell you what he's up to if you're paying attention.
Yep. But I wouldn't be surprised if Chris adds some copies of Gideon, as well as some planes to go with it instead of possibly those removal spells.
Oh, Chris has
or
the planes for Gideon sideboard
or
plan.
say Anointer of Champions. That's just a 1/1 with pretty much no ability for this matchup. Whereas Gideon is a good way to beat, say, even a Languish.
What
It
about-
adds to the board without falling to the sweeper.
What about that one Bygone Bishop in Chris's sideboard? That seems pretty sweet here. Every creature throws off a clue token.
It can give you some value in the long game, but I'm not sure it matches up all that well against a deck filled with spot removal spells. You play 3 mana card with an ability like Flying that's not super relevant, and it just dies to a Grasp of Darkness or an Ultimate Prize.
Lets you put, 3, maybe even 4 creatures on the board, though, and then still recover from the Languish.
Sure.
It's good against the Languish part of his deck, but you're right. It doesn't trade favorably with a Grasp of Darkness.
But
Just a one-of.
it could still be a fine consideration. You always have some ability to tweak the deck a little.
Wow, Chris has 4 total Griffspoon in his 75. 2 in the main, 2 more in the sideboard. Card just keeps going up and up.
Yeah, that card I think many, when it was released in Shadows over Innistrad, many people didn't really think of it as a constructed card.
Right.
But it turned out to be quite powerful, both as a way to pressure for the last couple points of damage, also as a repetitive way to use your mana in
Yeah.
the late game.
Yeah, I lost a Pro Tour Gauntlet match. I got dealt the Bank Company deck, and I lost this matchup against
Mhm.
White Weenie because, he just kept bringing back Griffspoon, and it's like, well, one turn I bounced it, one turn I tapped it. It just kept coming back, and I couldn't deal 20 before Griffspoon flew over for lethal.
Yeah, the creatures these days in Standard are just really powerful, and many decks include way more creatures than spells, which means that abilities like Flying that help you break through creature stalls
Right.
Get much more valuable.
This has to be a pretty nice matchup advantage for Chris Pakula, though, right? Big picture here, White Weenie versus Esper nowadays.
I would expect that Esper has the advantage here.
Really?
Yeah, I think Seth Manfield played a similar-looking Esper deck at the Pro Tour, and he said that he hadn't lost a match to.
Does Shaheen have the same removal suite he does, though?
The list is a bit different, perhaps, but still, like a lot of language, a lot of spot removal.
He doesn't have the
spells.
ultimate prices that Seth had.
No, it's in the sideboard. But at least Seth was really happy with his matchup. He built his deck with all the answers to early creatures, and it worked out super well for him. Now, obviously, Shaheen didn't really have a fast start in the previous game, and that one language and pretty much no other relevant spells is not good enough. But going by Seth Manfield's experience, this should be a favorable matchup for the deck with 4 language.
Yeah, there's not as many Planeswalkers in Shaheen's version of it as either. I don't know, he's got a little more permission. We'll see. Hey, look, a Savannah Lion.
One of the many in the deck.
Shaheen.
Yeah, there are approximately 20 creatures that cost 1 mana and have 2 power in this deck. It's
Kinda
insane.
crazy. Shaheen reveals for his Shadowland. He's got blue and 1 available for this turn. He actually plays Clash of Wills. Okay, also plays Grasp, of course. Oh, only the 1/2 drop on turn 2. That was good news for Team Esper. Chris
For
only
sure.
able to play 1 creature after Shaheen spent 2 mana on a Grasp of Darkness.
Yeah, it tells Shaheen that Chris's hand is not all that powerful. I'm actually surprised to see 2 drops in Chris's hand right now, the Anaffenza as well as Atalia's Lieutenant, because if Chris had played a 2-drop on turn 2,
He
Follow-
just
follow-
drew the Anafenza, right? He wouldn't have played Anafenza there. So I guess if he was going to play a 2-drop, it would have been a 1/1 Lieutenant.
sure. Still, if he had gone that route, then he would have been able to use his mana more efficiently, which is always an issue for a deck that is so low on lands.
Only because he top-decked Anafenza, though.
Sure.
Now, I was as surprised as you were. I think it actually does make sense He just drew his cards in an unfortunate order.
Mhm.
There's the Thalia's Lieutenant.
Of course, there is always some value to waiting with the power cards in your deck. Thalia's Lieutenant is one of the better cards in the entire White Weenie deck. By holding them, not playing them as your first creature, you can incentivize your opponent to spend removal spells on the other less important creatures and keep the better creatures like Thalia's Lieutenant on the battlefield.
All right, well, there was the Kalitas in from the sideboard, and Chris, that's a Stasis Snare in from the sideboard as well, right?
Yes, indeed. This is not a case of Chris had Stasis Snare in the main deck and he just left it in. He actively anticipated Shaheen Soorani to board in some creatures like Kalitas.
Yep.
And added Stasis Snare in order to deal with them. So, smart thinking ahead by Chris there. Because I'm sure if that Kalitas would have stayed on the battlefield here, yeah, Chris would have been in a really bad position.
Wow, that was just cycle my Ojutai's command, gain 4 life, draw a card, play a land from Shaheen. Not the most exciting turn 6 he's ever had. Guess he's down to 1 card in hand, though. He was on a mulligan this game, so started with 6.
Shaheen is just digging towards either a Languish to clear the board or a Planeswalker to get some advantage. But now,
there's the Gideon you were talking about.
Now things change. If Shaheen draws a Languish, then Chris says, well, okay, all my creatures die, but I still have this Planeswalker here. And Chris has a very powerful board right now. Shaheen draws a Planeswalker. That's not going to stay alive for too long. So in order to come back, Shaheen probably has to first answer the Gideon, then find a Languish, and then some Planeswalker to start getting back some card advantage. That's quite a tall order. A tough sequence to assemble.
Chris declined the attack because he wants to transform his Gossipmonger. That's what just happened, right? He just said, I don't want to deal 3, you're at 21. I'll play for the longer game. And kind of gets punished a little bit. He'll never get those 3 points back.
Could have still attacked with Thalia's Lieutenant, but oh well.
Oh, because he can tap the Night Ally? All right. So there was the sweeper. It wasn't Languish. It was Descend Upon the Sinful.
Yeah.
But still, same effect. 6 mana, sweep the board. Chris, though, does have the Gideon that Shaheen still hasn't dealt with. And now he's going to reload his board as well. Now, how do you play this Gideon here if you're Chris? Are you making knights? Are you just attacking?
I might actually just attack. Because if you make a knight, it's just a 2/2. It won't get boosted by always watching because it's a token. And Shaheen has a Shambling Vent on the table that can easily block a 2/2. So I would prefer to just get in for 5 damage, put on the clock that way.
I like the attack too. That's what Chris went with. Obnixilis.
Yeah, that's nice. But doesn't help Shaheen all that much. A couple turns ago I gave the sequence on how Shaheen can get back into this game, which was, well, first a sweeper, followed by an answer for Gideon, and then a Planeswalker.
He skipped a step.
Yeah, just the Planeswalker right now, without an answer for Gideon or some way to protect it, is not going to do all that much.
Wow, he ignores Obnixilis. Pluses the Gideon and attacks Shaheen down to 8. I guess he figures, I mean, with 2 loyalty, Obnixilis can only tick up, and he's willing to let Shaheen have that card.
It is a bit dangerous, though. It's a tough decision, because on the one hand, by attacking Shaheen's life total, you get Shaheen down to, well, 0 as quickly as possible. And yeah, ticking up Obnixilis forces Shaheen to lose additional points of life. Even if Shaheen gets to destroy another creature with the -3, doesn't matter that much. At the same time, you do give Shaheen a chance that if he draws, say, a Ruinous Path for the Gideon, then he might claw back into the game with the Planeswalker that he has.
Right.
So.
All right, so Gideon ticks up. I looked, was that both attacking Shaheen? I think that was both attacking Shaheen.
Yeah, if Chris is on the attack Shaheen plan on the previous turn, it makes sense to stick with that. Dragon Hunter is a 4-3 now, so the Shambling Advantage is going to be effectively a jump block.
Does gain him enough life to survive Gideon, though, right? Hello. More Ojutai's Command just to gain life and draw a card.
Then again, if Shaheen was just jump blocking, wouldn't it have been better to jump block the Gideon instead rather than the Dragon Hunter? May have missed a couple points of life there.
Second copy of Kalitas has come down. Obnixilis is now going to give his life to kill Kithian. Oh, indestructible. That doesn't work.
Yep.
You forget about that 3 mana to make Kithian indestructible.
It is a relevant ability.
Yeah, Shaheen could have taken out the Dragon Hunter, but
All right, so
I think he just missed that. I think he was planning to ultimate price to kill 2 creatures that turn.
well, ultimate pricing response to the Kithian activated ability still means that that 2-1 is going to bite the dust. And a zombie token that will help jump block the Gideon.
All right, here's Thraben Inspector. Chris is going to immediately sack the clue. Now, what does Kalitas do to this board? I mean, Gideon still has a clean attack. Dragon Hunter still gets to attack too, right?
Yes. Kalitas can trade for a Dragon Hunter,
Yeah.
gain some life in the process, giving Shaheen possibly some time in order to find an answer for the Gideon. Shaheen definitely... does he have to jump block Gideon? Well, due to the life gain from Kalitas, if he decides to just block Kalitas on Dragon Hunter.
Yeah, he can take 1 Gideon hit.
At the same time, he would really like to keep that Kalitas around on the battlefield, so that
True
if
story.
Shaheen draws another removal spell, he can possibly
Okay.
get another zombie token, maybe
he
make
decides-
Kalitas bigger.
He wants to keep Kalitas, so he chump blocks Gideon with the zombie,
Yeah, that makes sense.
takes the Dragon Hunter hit down to 2.
So Shaheen really has to draw some removal spell here, otherwise he is probably going to lose on Chris's next attack. Oh, it's something.
It's Dark Petition.
That's not bad.
That is not bad.
So one option is to go for Languish, sweep the board, you
Kills
get 2 zombie
Kalitas, though.
tokens. Yeah, it does.
Doesn't deal with Gideon. Can he do better than that? That might be the right answer.
Alternatively, he could just get, say, 1 spot removal spell to kill a creature and get a zombie token. Maybe Ruinous Path on the Gideon.
Ooh.
That could work, and then block, say, a Dragon Hunter. Ooh, this is even better. This is like a Ruinous Path with a bonus. Oh, wow.
Selimgar's Command.
Oh, yes.
Jeez.
That is quite a swing.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the perfect card for the situation. Not only deal with the Gideon, the main threat on the table, but also destroy, well, a random 4-3, get a zombie. Suddenly
Jeez.
the game has turned around.
Chris is holding an Anafenza, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
There she is. Yeah, just has to shift the turn back. Shaheen's at 2, but Kalitas is a life-linking menace at this point. Yeah, Shaheen he doesn't think he can risk an attack, though. So he's still hanging out at 2, still hanging out with a couple defenders.
Now, if Sheen had attacked with the Kalitas, it would have just been double blocked, and then Sheen would have lost it. Right now, Kalitas is an excellent blocker because it just threatens to become a 5-6 after a zombie sacrifice. 5-6 lifelink. That means that Chris doesn't really have any good attacks right now.
So what happens now? If Chris draws a removal spell, he just wins, right?
Yes. That will be it. If Chris just draws a string of, say, Thraben Inspectors into more creatures, or like a Gideon to build up an overwhelming board presence, Chris can also get in for the last 2 damage.
No, but Shaheen's deck is, of course, the deck with more good late-game cards. And Jace Fringe Prodigy totally counts.
A third always watching. That doesn't really change all
He
that
still
much.
can't
Well,
attack through Kalitas, right?
well, Knight of the White Orchid can attack. It's currently a 6/6, so Shaheen cannot profitably block with even a 5/6 Kalitas.
Yeah,
If-
good point.
If Chris attacks with Knight of the White Orchid
It
here,
must be blocked, and it eats anything.
yeah, it will just be blocked by a zombie. That's a start. But if Knight of the White Orchid is being blocked by a zombie, Chris should not attack with his other two creatures, because those will just be blocked by the Kalitas. And that one is big enough to rumble with both Draven and Spectre and Anafenza after eating a zombie.
Yeah, mirror analysis looks right to me. Attack with just Knight of the White Orchid. Still can't be happy about Jace flipping next turn.
No, that Jace is going to do a lot of work. Let's see if Shaheen actually has Delirium. I see Lands, Planeswalker, Instant. Oh yeah, and Sorcery. So Shaheen could flashback Descend upon the Sinful with Jace and just get a
Cute.
big token. Or maybe just another Silumgar's command to keep the Kalitas around. Plenty of options.
Discard the land, flips the Jace. Now now we find out how Shaheen wants to play this game from here. Because his board position is still quite fragile. As the board stands, Chris insta-wins with a removal spell. And Chris has also got Knight of the White Orchid as a must chump block threat. So Shaheen needs to deal with Knight of the White Orchid one way or the other.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the Descend upon the Sinful in the graveyard seems like an excellent way to get back.
Looking at Dark Petition?
Where's the second white source?
Sorry?
Or doesn't Descend upon the Sinful cost white 4? Maybe it doesn't.
Well, there is a Plains, but I think he just played it.
Yes, that is white 4. Okay. He does have double white.
Oh, yeah, it is Shambling Vent. It's Shambling Vent Prairie Stream. Shambling Vent has died since he cast it.
Right.
That's what happened. All right, so Dark Petition for Sorin Grim Nemesis is the line Shaheen has taken. Sorin kills Anafenza, which creates a zombie, which can now chump the Knight of the White Orchid.
Also-
Chris still insta-wins with a removal spell, if I'm looking right. Did he just draw Declaration in Stone?
Yeah, but,
He
but
did.
it's not going to be an insta win anymore because Sorin gave Shaheen a bunch of life points.
Okay, so the chump block still keeps Shaheen alive. Wow, what a weird spot for Chris. Knight is going to get chump blocked. Although, it's crazy. It's 6 power and Shaheen got himself to 7. Thraben Inspector is 4 power. So what is he? Is he just ignoring the Planeswalkers and going at Shaheen again? They are down to low loyalty. Yeah. He's continuing his trend of saying, ignore your Planeswalkers. I'm going to kill you. Neither one of those is super scary at low loyalty, so...
Yeah, it's a fair plan. It still has the issue that you leave a Sorin around, giving Shaheen extra cards.
That part doesn't sound great, not going to lie.
But as long as
The extra
Shaheen
card is in
doesn't,
Evolving Wilds.
doesn't find any good cards.
Sacks the clue. Bunch of lands. Chris Pakula wins. 2-0. White Weenie over Esper. Pretty significant sideboarding from Chris. He brought in Gideons. He brought in some land. He actively brought in removal spells to deal with Kalitas. And, yeah, killed 2 Kalitas. Shaheen couldn't quite stitch things together at the end there. Almost stabilized. Probably did stabilize, but couldn't quite turn the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that the sideboarding by Chris Pakula there was definitely the main factor in him taking down this game. Anticipating what his opponent would do.
All right, so we've got David Ochoa against Magnus Lanto here on our turbo match. Sorry, we're not going to have life totals for this. Looks like is David on the Aristocrats deck? I see Cryptolith right into Elvish Visionaries. I assume he's
Yes,
just
he
running back
is.
the deck from the Pro Tour. Yeah. This is one of Luis's teammates, of course. They've been teammates on pretty much every version of Channel Fireball there has ever been. And the Ocho running the deck back here at the GP.
And on the right side, Magnus Lanto. He was a member of Team Eureka, who played the red-green goggles deck at the Pro Tour.
Right.
For this event, he switched to Band Company because he felt, as we all agreed, that the Pro Tour winning deck list, the green-white tokens deck, was not a good matchup for green-red goggles. Whereas
Dueling collected companies. This is funny. Keep going.
Whereas going back to, say, level 1 of Band Company might be a good way to approach the metagame for this weekend.
Okay.
He made a couple of changes. I saw a deck list with Eldrazi Sky Spawner and more Evasins as kind of a combo to transform the Evasin, sacrifice
Funny.
the Sky Spawner.
Sure.
Or the token, rather, to get better against all the token decks running around now.
What a crazy sequence. So this is mid-attack. Sylvan Advocate attacked, and Ochoa responded with Collected Company, and so did Magnus. But this did not work out great for Magnus. His creatures go to the graveyard, and Ochoa's do not. Ochoa hit better on his Collected Company, basically. Nantuko Husk being particular superstar.
Excellent blocker. So it looks like David also has Zulaport Cutthroat in hand. That can already set up a nice sequence of a lot of drain triggers with a big Nantuko Husk. Always block the Husk in such situations.
Yeah. That's your verse. That you did the math. The math says just always block the Husk. Never take an Nantuko Husk hit.
Yep.
Well, we'll see if Magnus agrees with you.
Well, I mean, it's not.
It's
It's
probably
prob-
not
probably
actually
not
lethal.
lethal, but it's
so much
certainly
damage.
getting close.
It's like 14 damage, I think.
Yes.
Oh. But it's only 14 damage if David moves all in, and he didn't. He just contented himself with dealing 2.
Yeah, if Magnus is still above 14, then there's no point in sacrificing your entire board, putting Magnus down to, say, 2 life, and then only
Right.
having 1 Nantuko Husk on the battlefield.
Reflector Mage. On the Cutthroat, not the Husk.
Ooh, this is a bit wrecking because David has another Cutthroat in hand, which he also won't be able to cast on the next turn. And he could sacrifice it to Nantuko Husk, but that doesn't really give him a lot of advantage either.
Yeah, in the short term, he would have been allowed to play the second Husk, right? Because the effect fizzles, or how does that work?
I believe that is how it works when the...
If the creature doesn't get returned, then the prohibition against casting it doesn't kick in.
Exactly, then the effect is just countered. David is also getting somewhat close towards transforming Westville Abbey into Ormondale.
True.
That is kind of a risky proposition against Band Company because the deck has both Reflector Mage and Bounding Crazes in order to deal with an Ormondale. But certainly a line that
Wow.
David has access to.
David's
Soon
just dumping
enough.
the rest of his hand. Blister Pod into Loam Dryad via Cryptolith Rites. Now he's got, I guess he's 1 mana short. Oh, if he sacks Blister Pod to Husk, he can get a Scion token to be the 5th mana for Ormondale. Is that true? I count him as having access to 5 mana. No, it's 4 mana. Those 2 creatures have Summoning Sickness.
Yeah, that's the problem here. But
And you see him, he's actually
pretty close.
he set those creatures off to the left so that he can remember that they can't be tapped for Cryptolith Rites mana.
There we see another kind of innovation in the Band Company list that Magnus Lanto is playing, Eldrazi Displacer.
Oh, there's some spice.
Yeah, and thanks to Yavimaya Coast, it is easy to activate. It's
Okay.
sweet to hit off of Collected Company, and here it means that it can blink out potentially lethal Husks. Obviously means that transforming Westville Abbey into an Ormondale is a losing proposition. And yeah, the attacks also get much better now because typically when you attack into an Nantuko Husk and a bunch of other creatures,
Right.
you're not really getting ahead because, the Husk grows big, eats one of your guys. But here, if Magnus chooses to, he can just take out the Husk momentarily with Eldrazi Displacer
Yeah, if
to
he does
ensure that
that,
his
though-
creature sticks around.
If he does that, doesn't he open himself up to a Ormondal hit on David's main phase?
Possibly, yes.
Oh, okay. He's going Dromoka's command. So he's not flickering with the Displacer, which he could have done off the Gavamite Coast. Instead, it's Dromoka's command. Which is going to what? Force Husk to eat an extra creature? And Cryptolith Rites goes down as the enchantment. All right. Now that takes Ormondal out of play. Without Cryptolith Rites, I don't see David making the 5 mana he needs for Ormondal.
Yeah, and even if he has the mana, there's still that Eldrazi Displacer, such that sure you can get in for 1 hit.
Well, but he
But-
can play double Zulaport Cutthroat this turn too. If he had Cryptolith Rites, he could have gone. Oh, he does have a new Cryptolith Rites. Can't he go Cutthroat? Well, he tapped the Ormondal, so it was super close to Cutthroat into Ormondal into lethal.
Indeed, that would have definitely done it. Just 10 points of a drain from the Zulaport Cutthroat and an attacking Ormondal. That would have been the game. But yeah, he probably just lacked 1 or 2 mana in order to
makes sense.
to do that sequence. Close though. Well, this one Magnus better block.
Yeah, it is a big advocate. Tap 3 creatures and sack Scion for Collected Company. Now, if he hits Cutthroat, is this lethal maybe? Yeah, it's tough without the life totals. Maybe not.
Yes.
Pretty clear that we're at the point where Magnus just must block. What did we hit with Collected Company? I see Liliana in there. Liliana and another Nantuko Husk.
All right.
So there's an attacking Nantuko Husk, which at this point has not eaten anything. It's being blocked by a 4/5 Sylvan Advocate.
So David has to sacrifice 2 creatures, or perhaps even 1 creature, transform Liliana, then sacrifice the zombie that Liliana generates.
All right. So Husk ate a Lone Dryad. That'll flip Liliana and bring a zombie into play. If he wants to win the combat, he's still got to...
Then there's also a
Sack
Scry
one
trigger, the Zulaport Cutthroat trigger. There's a lot to keep
yeah.
track of in this deck.
It's going to eat the other Scion, I think. Indeed. So 6/6 Husk. Trigger the Drain Life. He's not going to bother scrying because I think he's happy with what he's found. Magnus is rooting for him to have forgotten the scry. But I think David scried to the top last time. Back in his main phase, Liliana says, how do we get this Blister Pod back into play?
Yeah, especially with 2 Nantuko Husks on the battlefield. Blister Pod is an excellent creature. It basically represents +4/+4 on 1 Husk, or +2/+2 on 2 Husks spread out. All the while chump blocking some other creature.
There's the Eldrazi Sky Spawner you were talking about.
And now Magnus also has access to a potential Eldrazi Displacer Reflector Mage combo, which is quite nice against Nantuko Husk.
Sure. This has to be super close to lethal, though. Second Cutthroat? Second Cutthroat.
Yeah, that has definitely got to be super
That's-
close. There's
that's
1,
like-
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 creatures on the battlefield
Yeah,
already.
that's
Liliana threatens to get back a Blister Pod. That should be like approximately 9 creatures times 2 damage. It doesn't work out exactly that way.
once you
because in
start
the
sacking
end-
the Cutthroats,
yeah.
you don't get the... They're not both worth 2.
But makes sense that this would be
So some cool
lethal.
tech shown off by Magnus Lanto. This Bant Company deck looks neat, but David Ochoa just had the combo kill.
Mhm.
And I mean, the Green-Black Sacrifice deck is very, very good against Bant Company. It's one of the reasons that CFP played it.
Yeah, and this combo kill is a large part of the reason, because Band Company doesn't have a lot of hard removal spells.
Right.
Whereas the Green-Black deck has Collected Company and Duskwatch Recruiter to find all those Zulaport Cutthroats and then set up the lethal kill that you just saw. So just a Blister Pod and a Zulaport Cutthroat here for
Just?
David Ochoa.
It's only had 2 turns.
Yeah. I mean, could have been more, you know, with Cryptolith or Loam Dryad.
Sure.
The deck can be super explosive.
So tell me about Eldrazi Sky Spawner again. Why do you want that in the Band Company list? It's just that, I mean, Eldrazi Displacer is kind of fun. Having a flyer is useful sometimes.
Yeah, flyers can help break through all the creature ground stalls that can easily happen in the standard format, especially with many creatures having more toughness than power.
Mm-hmm.
And the Eldrazi Scion can help you, well, accelerate out an Archangel Avacyn. This deck plays more than usual ahead of time.
Oh yeah,
or
that's Avacyn mana for Magnus right now, isn't it?
And once Avacyn is on the battlefield, sacrificing an Eldrazi Scion helps you transform it, which could be huge as well.
Cute.
Yeah, so at this point, David is in the tough position of playing against a Band Company deck with lots of open mana. You just never know what could come. Could it be Collected Company? If so, what will come out of the company?
Right. And I mean, he knew it, but you know what? He's got a Blister Pod. The Husk can eat that. I think he can't afford to just do nothing. So he attacks. Sylvan Advocate and Eldrazi Displacer come out, which is, I guess, not really the end of the world. Husk just eats Blister Pod, right? And then it's effectively a 1-for-1 trade.
Not sure what to think of the jump block by Sylvan Advocate on what would be a 4-4 Nantuko Husk. Feels a bit aggressive to already start jumping here. On the other hand, Magnus is ahead in this game. He has the flyer. He has an Eldrazi Displacer. It's fair.
It's David's turn to play Collected Company. He hits Catacomb Sifter, Duskwatch Recruiter.
Not bad.
Now, I mean, the companies feel a little more busted in Ochoa's hands. Not going to lie, this deck just feels like it uses that card a little more degenerately.
It does have more creatures, as well as kind of a creature combo kill.
Right.
So
Right.
yes,
It's like there's more sort of combo synergy and more hits
Mhm.
generically. I mean, the Band Company's more value, right? It's more incremental advantage.
Yep.
So if we're just going to sit around and see which deck wins when they both do their thing, I like David's side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Archangel Avacyn.
Also, what Magnus can do here is already put all of his creatures, which have indestructible, in front of the Nantuko Husk, forcing David to sacrifice a bunch of things.
That's 8 power.
And then, this could be sweet. Then Magnus can just sacrifice his Eldrazi Scion to transform the
Oh,
Archangel.
jeez.
And
Yeah,
then,
David sees it. What happens if you...
then red David's board, and then when the Archangel or Avacyn the Purifier damage trigger is on a stack, Magnus can blink it with Eldrazi Displacer, such that a regular frontside Archangel Avacyn enters the battlefield with this 3 damage trigger still on the stack, giving Magnus's creatures indestructible
Oh my god.
and setting up a one-sided blowout. This could be huge.
Oh my god, that just all works, doesn't it?
Yes. It's beautiful.
That's insane. I guess he has to live that long is the
Yeah,
only problem.
if there's some more Zulaport
If there's a
Cutthroats coming out. No Cutthroats.
No Cutthroat. We get 3 creatures though.
Magnus definitely dodged that one.
Yeah, Cutthroat would have been lethal. This is probably not lethal. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 creatures.
That's a lot of drain triggers, but
that's
I
it.
don't think Magnus is that low yet.
Yeah, and Ochoa sees the whole combo Wrath kill coming, but I think he was just saying, look, if I hit Cutthroat, I win, so I'm going to go for it. And instead, this Avacyn blowout is even bigger.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sacks the Scion, triggers Avacyn. Oh, he just flips her. Why not blink her? Oh, there's a trigger on the stack right now? He can just blink her, right? With the trigger on the stack and bring back the indestructible version.
Yes, I believe that is correct. That is a powerful interaction between Eldrazi Displacer and Archangel Avacyn in the first
that's
place.
Nuts. But this is David responding to the trigger. Or I guess responding to the transform trigger? They're both triggers, right?
Well, the transform trigger resolves. It just happens, and then afterwards this 3 damage trigger goes on the stack. If Magnus wants to blink it, he will have to do that before passing priority back to Magnus.
Here we go. That's exactly what he's going to do. All right, they're actually talking with a judge here to make sure the timing got worked out. The question was, did Magnus pass to resolve Avacyn's flip? The floor judge's ruling was no, and the head judge is going to wind up upholding that here. There's no indication of advancing the game state. Magnus still had priority with the ability on the stack.
Yeah, that is something to always keep track of here, and communicating very clearly with your opponent is always the best way to do it. From a rules perspective, if Magnus has to respond to his own trigger by blinking Avacyn the Purifier. If he just passes priority to David, and David says, well, I have no responses, then the trigger is just going to resolve, and then it's too late to blink the Archangel.
Now, we did see David do a bunch of stuff, but that was in response to the front side trigger of, hey, somebody died last turn, it's time to transform me.
Yeah, possibly.
I think that, I mean, that's what I was trying to make sense of.
Or David jumped the gun a bit and already started activating things before giving Magnus a chance to actually respond to his own trigger. But one way or another, as the ruling of the judges was, Magnus still has the ability to respond to his own trigger and has not actually passed priority there.
Yeah, this is, because this match is recorded and we're watching it on Turbo, we know how this ruling is going to turn out.
Yep. Yeah, just a communication issue. But one way or another, this is beautiful to see the interaction between the cards that Magnus put into his deck. Because a regular Banned Company deck does not run Eldrazi Displacer or Eldrazi Skyspawner. But in his list, together with Archangel Avacyn, it all works beautifully together. And it gives him an excellent way to fight against all of these decks that flood the board with low toughness creatures like David's.
That's some sweet tech, Frank. You guys get any other sweet tech up your sleeve?
Nothing extra beyond this, I believe.
Nothing extra or no comment? Because there's a difference between those two answers.
Nothing extra. All right, so after that rules issue was resolved, where apparently the judges ruled that Magnus had not passed priority over to David, possibly after receiving back priority after David used one of his own abilities. Wow. We get back to a situation where Magnus is firmly in the lead.
Unbelievable. Everyone always had the dream of Archangel Avacyn to save everybody from Avacyn the Purifier. You guys actually put it in a deck and it works. It totally works and it's totally good. This is sweet. Yeah, Collected Company to kill Nantuko Husk. Sure looks like we're going to head to game 3. Recall that David Ochoa did win the first one with the Zulaport Cutthroat combo kill. Mm-hmm. A kill that he almost pulled off this game. If Collected Company had found him a second Cutthroat, Magnus would not have survived long enough to do the whole Avacyn flip trick.
True. Ooh, a complete miss off of Collected
Swing
Company.
And a miss.
Not that Magnus really needs all that much at this point in the game.
All right. Missing Quagmire trades for Displacer. Sky Spawner just keeps going over. Catacomb Sifter doesn't look like enough to save David.
No, I don't think there are many cards that can get David out of this situation.
I like
perhaps a string of Collected Companies, but
I like the Pro Tour stamp on the Eldrazi Displacer.
Yep.
It's particularly good on a busted draft rare, right? I mean, it's like for the maximum show-off value. All right. Reflector Mage prompts the concession, and we are off to game number 3. Ochoa leads with a Loam Dryad. Lanto's just got a couple of lands. Tireless Tracker on turn 3.
Did David put Lanto on the play? That's somewhat unusual. Or maybe there was a missed land drop, but looked like Magnus won the previous game, but now he has more lands than David.
He did win the previous game, that's for sure.
Interesting.
All right. So 2 Recruiters, a Loam Dryad, and a Zulaport Cutthroat for David Ochoa. Tireless Tracker and Reflector Mage for Magnus Lanto. Wastes? Seriously? So you have an Evolving Wilds mana base, and you put Eldrazi Displacer in it, so...
If you want to activate it, then that's where you have to go.
A couple of Krallenhide Hordes for Ochoa now.
And it looks like we've caught up to the actual live match.
We have, in fact, caught up to live.
Yeah, this is a good battle between solid archetypes.
Did you say that before or after you looked at the words under their names?
After.
You could have lied to me. I would have believed you.
Well, so far the match seems to be fairly even. David does have access to Zulaport Cutthroat plus Nantuko Husk, the combo that his deck is partly based around. And I think he even has a second Zulaport Cutthroat in hand that is always extremely powerful. The first one is just good, the second one is often the nail in the coffin. Magnus, meanwhile, also has a fine board presence. No reasonable blockers for the 3/3s on David's side yet, but you know, this is a banned company deck, so there could be anything ranging from Collected Company to Archangel Abyssin coming down.
There is Cutthroat number 2.
Yep. Things are going so well for David. He just tosses his cards on the floor. So right now there are 6 creatures on the battlefield for David. That means that he is not close to killing Magnus yet.
Tireless Tracker's looking pretty good here. Not really... I mean, David doesn't really remove enemy creatures. It's not really what his deck does, so some serious value accruing. A couple extra cards. It's now 5/4.
You know, many players also adjusted their card choices a little bit after seeing the results of the Pro Tour, adding stuff like Profaner of the Dead or extra Tragic Arrogance to their sideboards in order to deal with all of these swarms of creatures that this green-black sacrifice deck can put out.
Sure.
I believe I saw a Tragic Arrogance in Magnus's hand. That could be quite the swing, leaving David Ochoa with just
Here we go.
a Loam Dryad. It's going to be a lot of Zulaport Cutthroat triggers, but not lethal yet.
I mean, David should just pick the creature he wants by sacrificing all the others, right?
Yes, David can indeed do that. That's a good point.
First thing he's going to do, though, is activate Duskwatch Recruiter.
Yep.
He had the Loam Dryad ready to be the 3rd mana.
Mm-hmm.
So recruit Catacomb Sifter onto the team. Now, yeah, Tragic Arrogance still on the stack.
Yeah, you have to respond to the Tragic Arrogance. You can't just let it resolve if you are David. Because then Magnus will just leave you with a Loam Dryad. But if, for instance, you decide you want to keep Zulaport Cutthroat, you sacrifice everything except for the Zulaport Cutthroat to the Husk.
It's going to keep the Husk, it looks
yeah,
like.
I mean,
so
that's fair too. It depends a bit on what you have in hand. So definitely a smart play by David here.
9 damage. Now you can resolve Tragic Arrogance. See, Tragic Arrogance was terrible. All it did was kill Magnus's own Reflector Mage. It's not a very good card. You disagree with my summary of what just happened?
No, I mean, technically when the Tragic Arrogance resolved, that is what it did. So Magnus still at 7 life. He will likely have to block the Nantuko Husk on this turn. Even if David just attacks with a Husk and then passes, Magnus has to be wary of Collected Company, so he always has to block the Nantuko Husk at this stage of the game. Fortunately for Magnus, he has a 5-power creature to do that.
Yeah. Catacomb Sifter turns the Husk into a 6/6. David is kind of killed the Tireless Tracker. Makes sense. Gets a Scry for his trouble. Catacomb Sifter? Top, bottom? Sounds like a top card to me. David agrees.
It's reasonable enough. You could try to keep bottoming in order to dig for, say, Collected Company.
Yeah, Sifter seems far enough above average, though, with only one more Scry coming.
Yeah, especially when you have Nantuko Husk on the battlefield.
Nissa.
2 creatures is huge.
And Lanto's got a grip full of cards. Like, he sacrificed multiple clues. He slow rolled his hand a little bit to set up that Tragic Arrogance. So yeah, Nissa, and then still 4 more mana for whatever else he wants to do. Displacer. Okay. Nantuko Husk shenanigans aren't going to last much longer, because Eldrazi Displacer is here to flicker the Husk.
Yeah, so David right now may have some trouble attacking on the ground and winning that way.
Well, he gets this turn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, he's going to sack the Scion for Transgress. He gets a Scry first before the Transgress resolves.
But still a way to win the game that David has access to is via the Liliana in his hand. If he transforms Liliana, gets back Zulaport Cutthroat, he might set up 7 Drain triggers over the course of a bunch of turns.
So Archangel Avacyn leaves Magnus Lanto's hand. Okay, David did not attack into Ashaya. Yeah, I think he's on your plan.
But Magnus is not gonna give David all that much time to set up that final Zulaport Cutthroat. There's a lot of power on Magnus' side of the board, including a Lumbering Falls, which would be 5/5 thanks to Sylvan Advocate. It's maybe 2 additional attacks, and Magnus will have whittled down David's life total from 23 to 0. So David has to find a way to get back, and quickly.
Just takes 7 here. There's the Recruiter and the Jace that David saw off of Transgress.
There's not even enough space on the table to put down all these permanents. Yeah, and transforming Ormondale is also not going to be a possible route to victory due to the Eldrazi Displacer on Magnus' side of the board. He can activate it with the wastes that he has in play. So Zulaport Cutthroat seems to be the only realistic way for David to win this one.
Here's Liliana. She can't reanimate a Cutthroat yet. Somebody's got to... Oh, Blister Pod. That's a nice draw. So that gives him an easy sack to the Husk. Yeah,
Certainly a good start.
He's kind of imagining how this plays out now. And flip Liliana. I think it's the Cutthroat. There's... This is close.
Right, with this deck there is so many triggers going on. You always have to keep track of them carefully. So there is going to be a Scry trigger from Catacomb Sifter, a transformation from the Liliana. There was also the Die trigger from Blister Path, putting the Scion on the battlefield. Now I have to imagine that Liliana gets back Zulaport Cutthroat. That still seems like the best way to victory that David has access to.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Question is, can David actually attack with his Husk here? That might not be unreasonable. Magnus would definitely block, but can't really line up great blocks in order to take down the Nantuko Husk.
Probably winds up, what, eating a recruiter?
Yeah, perhaps.
I suspect Magnus wants his advocate. And as predicted, Liliana brings back Zulaport Cutthroat. Oh, Sifter's going to get in an attack too. Doesn't it just get eaten by Sylvan Advocate?
Yes. One thing that the players also have to keep track of is the potential of a Tragic Arrogance that's still in the graveyard. After
Sure.
Jace transforms,
Yeah, good point.
could flash that back. Yeah, and that might leave David with either a Zulaport Cutthroat or an Nantuko Husk, but not both. And that might help Magnus ensure that he won't necessarily die to a Great Collected Company on the next turn or something like that.
All right, Sifter does just die. I mean, effectively, this combat's going to work out to Sifter trading for Duskwatch Recruiter. Husk is up to 6/6 now. To be clear, the Husk ate the Sifter to get to 6/6. Didn't need it to beat up the Recruiter, but one Zulaport Cutthroat drain. Now, how much damage can Magnus do?
Well, I would be really surprised if he manages to deal lethal on this turn.
Yeah, it
He
feels
has,
like
he
there's
has a
enough
lot of
jump
power,
blockers.
but I don't think he can get to 17. Especially taking into account some potential drain triggers, so that you actually need more than 17.
Yeah, and you see the one there, that we are now in extra turns. This is the first of 5 extra turns.
Okay.
Nissa finds Duskwatch Recruiter.
So does Magnus have to flash back his Tragic Arrogance with a transformed Jace? If he does not, and David draws, say, Collected Company hitting, I don't know, Catacomb Sifter Blister Pod, then David can definitely drain out Magnus with his Zulaport Cutthroat Nantuko Husk combo, which means that it may be in Magnus's best interest to play that Tragic Arrogance now.
Yeah, Magnus also found Reflector Mage with the loot part of the Jace.
All right.
So he can Tragic Arrogance followed by Reflector Mage. Now he's going to lead with the Reflector Mage. On the Cutthroat. Oh, okay. Would you like to sacrifice some things, David? You're not going to be allowed to play Zulaport Cutthroat next turn if you pick this up. Wow, that's pretty clever.
That's also a perfectly fine play. It means that Magnus is not in danger of dying to Zulaport Cutthroat drains on the next turn.
Right, right.
And he should or might be able to set up lethal attacks within 2 turns. He does have a lot of power on the battlefield after all. And especially between the Eldrazi Displacer Reflector Mage combo, so to say.
Good point. And he's got the mana available for 2 Eldrazi Displacer activations.
Mm-hmm.
He can even get blockers out of the way, save his creatures.
He doesn't have the second colorless though.
No?
So
Oh, I thought I saw a Painland in there. I guess not.
he can activate Eldrazi Displacer once.
No, you're right. He's only got the one source of colorless, so only one Eldrazi Displacer activation. But he's, of course, cleverly left his land so that it looks like 3/3.
Alright, so David sacrificed his entire board. He thinks, okay, well, if I just let this Reflector Mage resolve, then I'm not going to win here. But maybe now, if I draw, say, another Collected Company or perhaps a Zulaport Cutthroat, then I might still be able to get there.
And Magnus Lanto just activated Displacer to flicker his Reflector Mage.
Yep.
And this Reflector Mage's second target of the turn is going to be that Nantuko Husk. David picks it up. I think Magnus Lanto is going to win this. What a crazy game.
Well, Magnus still has to attack Liliana, otherwise David might win with Collected Company into Zulaport Cutthroat plus Nantuko Husk and then get back Blister Pod for the final damage.
Sure.
But once Magnus does that, I
He's got
think
a lot
he
of
has the game locked up.
attackers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's going to take 2 attacks. No, he's going to leave Liliana.
Could be dangerous.
Yeah, he could have attacked for 3 less and killed Liliana.
I mean, it's a super unlikely sequence that I just specified, but not an impossible one.
Elvish Visionary
Well,
off the top.
that's not gonna do it. Maybe David can like draw another creature off the Visionary and then get something back with Liliana, present enough blockers. But against Eldrazi Displacer, that could still be activated, as well as Lumbering Falls that is more than ready to get into the red zone as well. This will be very difficult. It's so close, though. I don't think David even dealt a single point of damage with just regular combat damage.
He dealt.
Like,
He dealt 2.
It's 17 drains. Okay,
That was that one turn back at the
Okay.
beginning where Magnus decided he could take a Nantuko Husk hit.
Okay, 15 drains
I
then.
think that was this
That's
game.
still pretty impressive.
Yeah. That might have been last game, too.
So is this going to be lethal? Magnus can take out 1 blocker with Eldrazi Displacer, activate the Lumbering Falls, that one will be blocked. And then there is still, there should still be 9 damage getting through. Then again, Magnus may not know exactly what David has in hand and might be scared of something like an ultimate prize. But if there is no instant from David, then this should be lethal.
Block the biggest. 7-9. Yep. That should do it. Magnus Lanto wins 2-1. So the Team Eureka member, Team Eureka's take on this weekend's standard was, don't play the Goggles deck. Let's go to Bant Company, but let's put in Eldrazi Displacer, and it sure worked for him. That is going to do it for round 5 here at Grand Prix Toronto.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Shadows over Innistrad accessories